Thank you, Katrina. Good afternoon, bon après-midi. Thank you for joining us for this technical briefing to provide more information on the new spalling issue affecting the cartridge bearing assembly, or you'll also hear us refer to it as the CBAs, that's occurring on our O-Train Line 1 vehicles, as well as our action plan to restore capacity for our customers. Merci de vous être joint à nous pour cette séance d'information.
Thank you for being here for this technical briefing to talk about the action plan for Line 1 of the O-Train.
I'm joined by my colleagues Marco Krunke, Director of Engineering Services, Sabrina Pazian, our Chief Safety Officer, and Joel Lemieux, our Director of Transit Service Delivery and Rail Operations. I'd like to thank Chair Gower and Councillor Curry for being here to help moderate the question period. Thank you. And I'd also like to thank members of council, their staff, as well as the media for making the time to be here to attend this meeting. So thank you very much. Go to the next slide, please. So before we get into the details on today's technical briefing, I want to begin, as I have in the past, by speaking directly to our customers. These are the customers who are feeling the impact of the reduced rail fleet in their daily lives. I know that you are frustrated and that this issue is making it harder for you to get to work, get to your classes, and to make appointments. This falls short of the experience we expect to deliver for our customers, and I apologize for any inconvenience and impact that this has caused. My team and I are here not here to offer excuses, and I too am disappointed and agree with you that the service must improve. Everyone at OC Transpo are committed and focused on returning to our normal capacity and stabilizing service for you as quickly as we can. As well, we are continually monitoring the service, and where we can, we'll make adjustments to better meet the needs of our customers. We are working hard to deliver the service that you, our customers, expect and deserve. The decision to remove vehicles from service was not made lightly, as we know the impact and importance of transit in Ottawa. However, when we say safety is our top priority, we mean it. We'll never compromise on this. Every customer should feel confident when they step onto a Line 1 vehicle, it will get to their destination. And today, as a result of the ongoing work and the corrective actions put in place by the City Safety Order, Line 1 remains safe for our customers and our staff. I also want our customers to know that we're working to hold our contractor, RTG, accountable to meet our expectations for a stable, safe, and reliable service. Today's briefing is provided as part of our ongoing commitment to transparency. We want to ensure that council and the public are fully informed about the current state of the rail system. I know that everyone has many questions, and we are here today to provide you with an update and address as many as we can. This issue is complex, with 3 work streams, each with a defined outcome being completed in parallel, and we'll get into the details. In today's technical briefing, we'll provide updates and insights on the path to restoring capacity on Line 1. The first goal is ensuring the safety of our staff and our customers by removing from service any vehicles with CBAs, cartridge bearing assemblies, that have over 100,000 kilometers of mileage. The second goal is restoring capacity. We want to safely increase the number of trains available for service and ensure that we stabilize the fleet availability. This will allow us to return to operating double-car trains at all times. The final goal is ensuring a solution is in place for the long term. The city expects that the spalling issue will be fixed by RTG, and a root cause analysis is necessary to determine what that appropriate fix is. That is underway. As I said, I know that many of you have questions about how this may affect the O-Train East extension. We've had conversations about this. And I'll repeat, it's still too early to make any determinations on how or if this will impact the East extension. We're still in the early days. The Stage 2 team remains focused on reaching substantial completion as soon as possible. And when we have more information on that, we will provide an update. So next slide, please. Over the last 15 days, we've had 15 trains in operation. We have increased the frequency of the trains on Line 1 to every 3 to 4 minutes during the peak periods to help keep our customers moving. We've also increased the frequency of trains at some of the off-peak times as well. We've seen high ridership, but no excessive congestion at stations. And our team continues to monitor the system in real time and make adjustments, as I said, whenever possible. As shown in the graph, we normally operate 26 vehicles or 13 double-car trains during regular peak period service. Right now, we have up to 18 vehicles available. That number will continue to fluctuate for a variety of reasons, including routine preventative maintenance, which is normal. There can also be unplanned issues that take vehicles out of service temporarily. Both are part of regular operations, and we factor them in as we strategically manage the fleet and its mileage. Our goal is to restore the 26 vehicles needed during the busiest times. And to be clear, we do not need all the vehicles to return to regular peak service, as we have additional vehicles in our current fleet for the east and west extensions. Later in the presentation, Joel will speak in more detail about how operations are going and what customers are experiencing. So at this time, I'll pass the mic over to Marco, who will provide more details on the current situation affecting the CBAs and how it differs from the previous axle bearing assembly issues. Over to you, Marco.
Merci, Troy. Je m'appelle Marco Kroenke.
Thank you. I'm Marco Kronker. I'm the chief engineer at OC Transpo. In the following slides, I'll be giving you an overview of the current situation and some technical information on the new problem we're encountering.
I will talk about what has led us to this issue, some technical background information, what measures we have taken, and the action plan that's currently in place. RTG first informed the city that spalling was identified after it conducted an inspection of 8 cartridge bearing assemblies, also known as CBAs, and found spalling on 4 of them. Those routine inspections started after the initial CBA issue. As my colleague Sabrina will outline in more detail, RTG also provided the city documentation from its subcontractor Alstom stating that the fleet was safe to operate. RTG is continuing with the inspection, and as today 24 CBAs have been inspected, with 8 CBAs found to have spalling. As I will outline in the next slides, RTG provided documentation on the proposed containment measures. However, it did not have the appropriate technical information required. This issue is very complex, and as part of our due diligence process, our team engaged independent experts such as the Transportation Resource Associates, or TRA, to provide their technical expertise on this issue. TRA has been providing support since the initial CBA issue and are very familiar with our Line 1 system. After careful review of the available information and input from our independent expert, the city has required that first, any vehicle with CBAs at or exceeding 100,000 kilometers cannot continue in service until the CBAs are replaced or internal processes and procedures are implemented to detect spalling. Second, that additional technical and safety assurance information must be provided to demonstrate effectiveness of the containment and mitigation plans. Next slide, please. So I will start now a little bit with a technical explanation. Some of you may have seen similar slides previously. On this slide, you can see a top-down view of the bogie arrangement for a single light rail vehicle. Each vehicle has 5 bogies, and each bogie has 2 axles. Each axle contains 2 CBAs, 1 on each side of the bogie. As a result, a single bogie contains 4 CBAs, and a vehicle has a total of 20 CBAs. Next slide, please. Here we can see a view of one of the motor bogies mounted to an LRV with the skirts opened. On the next page, we see the motor bogie, how it looks like when it is dismounted from the vehicle. On the left and on the right, you can see the axles with the motor in the middle. On the outside of these axles is where you find the CBA, one of each of the axles then. Next slide, please. So coming to the bearing hub assembly. Now we have dissected those axles from the previous slide. We get to the bearing hub assembly. The photo on the left is how the CBA is delivered as a full assembly, can be exchanged. And the photo on the right is with the CBA torn down, exposing the roller bearing in bright silver towards the base. This row of rollers encasing the hub is called a tapered roller bearing, and it is part of the CBA where both of the bearing assembly issues are occurring. Next slide, please. This slide is showing the components inside a tapered rolling bearing, which is very similar to the one that from the previous slide. These types of bearings are made up of an inner race, a cage that contains the rollers themselves, and then the outer race of the bearing. The first picture on the right shows what it looks like when put together. What we are seeing today with spalling is that it is causing damage to either the outside surface of the inner race of the bearing or the inside surface of the outer race of the bearing, as shown by the red arrows. Next page, please. So what is spalling? We keep talking about the word spalling, so let me explain what it means. Spalling occurs when the surface of a material begins to flake or chip off. Over a period of time, this flaking or chipping further weakens the material itself by spreading out across the surface or extending deep into the material. Not only can spalling damage multiple components of the bearing or overall assembly, but the rate of deterioration can also be very quick in some cases. Once spalling occurs, the bearing will continue to deteriorate, increasing vibration and damaging components of the bearing until it's either detected or replaced or the bearing ultimately fails. Next slide, please. So coming back a little bit to the initial CBA issue, in this cross-section of the Excel drawing, we can see the differences between the issue causing the initial bearing failure and the spalling issues we are seeing now. For the initial Excel bearing issue, as shown on the left photo, repeated contact between metal components or fretting cause a loss of preload, which leads to the failure of the CBA. In the situation of the right photo, spalling is occurring in the areas highlighted on the right, which is damaging the bearing. While both of the issues are affecting the same main component, it is important to note that the type of damage taking place are different from each other. However, ultimately, they both lead to the same failure of the axle bearing assembly. Next page, please. For the initial CBA issue, we are still working through 3 work streams we have shared before. The first work stream is our containment plan, which includes items like the temporary speed restrictions, axle bearing inspection at 3,750 kilometers, and defined intervals for the CBA replacement at specific mileage. The second work stream includes mitigation measures that include adjusting the track's restraining rail, the implementation of top-of-rail lubrication, and the nut pinning measure. The final stream involves the redesign and installation of new CBA across the whole fleet, both of which the city continues to expect. Next slide, please. Now moving to the new issue. Right now, we know that spalling has only been detected in CBAs with more than 100,000 kilometers. While the rate of deterioration of the CBAs in our fleet is still unknown, once spalling has occurred, the bearing will continue to deteriorate unless detected and replaced. Without containing the issue, additional CBA components will be damaged, and if we are unable to detect spalling, this will lead to a bearing failure. This is why a new action plan is required to ensure containment and preparation for a long-term solution to the issue. Before I hand it over to my colleague Sabrina Parzian, I want to thank my team for their professionalism and dedication as we continue to work through this issue. Thank you, and next slide.
Merci beaucoup, Marco.
Thank you,
Bonjour
Marco.
à tous et tous.
Hello, everyone.
Before I get into the details of the action plan, I want to say a few words about safety. We've already mentioned it here today, but it bears repeating. Safety is always OC Transpo's top priority, but it's my sole focus as the Chief Safety Officer. Safety is not only at the forefront, but it's ingrained in every decision that I make. The decisions that led us to temporarily reducing the fleet availability for Line 1 and all the subsequent steps in returning to normal operations have been for the sole purpose of protecting our customers and our staff. We do not take these types of decisions lightly, and we took this step out of an abundance of caution so that our customers and our employees can be assured that the train fleet on Line 1 is and continues to be safe. The city is prioritizing safety, doing our due diligence to hold our contractors accountable, and working to restore reliable capacity on Line 1. This approach aligns with our safety assurance processes and our safety management system. OC
Transpo has taken these steps out of an abundance of safety to ensure the safety of our employees and our customers. OC Transpo always accords priority to safety while we do the necessary checks and to make sure that RTG is in a position to restore the reliability of Line 1.
We're taking a similar approach to the spalling issue as we did with the original CBA issue for the fretting, like we did several years ago. This multi-phased action plan that has been developed to address this new technical issue consists of 3 streams. The work streams represent the immediate actions taken and outline both the short, medium, and long-term steps in ensuring the continued safety and reliability of our Line 1 fleet. First and foremost, staff are focused on ensuring the overall safety of our Line 1 operations. This includes a robust safety assurance process involving a comprehensive risk assessment, technical reviews, and ensuring appropriate validation of the proposed mitigation measures. Our ultimate goal is to work to resolve this issue and ensure that the city receives the appropriate and adequate evidence to demonstrate that the fleet continues to be safe, that the proposed containment measures are appropriate for spalling, and that eventually that leads to the implementation of an overall long-term stable solution for Line 1. Next slide, please. Over the next few slides, I will walk you through the 3 work streams associated with our action plan in more detail. Au cours des prochaines diapos, je vais vous présenter
in the next slides, I will present the 3 action areas.
Immediate actions and short-term actions that we've taken. Since OC Transpo was made aware of this issue, comprehensive technical reviews have been completed. First by our Transit Engineering Services team, led by our Director of Engineering, Marco, in addition to reviews completed by both the safety and regulatory teams, which I oversee. As Marco mentioned, we have also continued working very closely with TRA, who is our independent safety consultant. Additionally, we've had several working sessions with RTG, Alstom, and RTM, including just this morning. RTG and Alstom continue to maintain that our Line 1 fleet is safe for normal operations. However, safety is too important to just take someone's word for it. Safety must be properly documented with information that is validated and verified to support it. La sécurité doit être correctement documentée.
Safety must be properly documented. It must be based on validated and checked information.
Based on the information that we've received to date on the risk assessment and the containment measures, we have determined that more information is needed to be provided to the city, including verification and validation of these proposed containment measures, along with some other key documentation. Because of these gaps in the information and the analysis conducted to date, in consultation with the experts at TRA, I issued a safety order to ensure the safety of the public and of our staff. Through this safety order, immediate action was taken to remove all the vehicles with CBAs of over 100,000 kilometers or more from service. As I said, we do not take these decisions lightly, and we are all very aware of the impact this has on our customers. In order to safely move forward, staff must validate the effectiveness and the appropriateness of these mitigation measures, which must be supported by relevant safety assurance documentation, such as a comprehensive risk assessment, which I'll touch upon later on. The city expects to receive all detailed documented information that demonstrates the containment measures are effective in reducing this risk and providing a methodology to detect spalling at an earlier stage, so it does not develop into a greater risk. This is about preventability. OC Transpo's safety order will remain in place until the city is fully satisfied that the requirements have been met. Next slide, please. Moving on to work stream 2, This is part of the action plan that represents the short and medium-term items and work that has already begun. This stream focuses on risk identification, further technical reviews, and analysis. It includes key steps such as the validation and verifications of methods, which can detect spalling before it develops further. On this slide, we'll focus on the risk assessment and the validation portion specifically. Les évaluations des risques sont un outil essentiel pour garantir la sécurité de notre
assessment
service.
is necessary to
In
ensure
all
the safety
transit
of our
operations
service.
throughout the world, there is an inherent level of risk. Risk is a natural part of life. However, there's some things that we can do to limit our exposure to risk. Some risks are acceptable, they're part of our normal day-to-day operations, and they're built into our policy and procedures to manage. Other risks are not acceptable and can only become acceptable if appropriate mitigation measures are implemented. Identifying and controlling risk is paramount, and it is of key importance to safety management. It is one of the main pillars of our safety management system. This is why a formal risk assessment is so important. The risk assessment must account for the frequency and the possible range of severity of the spalling issue, in accordance not only with OC Transpo safety management system, but RTG and RTM safety management systems as well, in addition to good industry practice and all applicable law. A risk assessment, details the risk, all of the risks, and the impacts related to them, analyzes and evaluates each risk, considering both the likelihood and the impact that that risk could cause to people, property, operations, or the environment. It ranks each risk to determine and identify if mitigation measures are required to reduce the overall risk to an acceptable level. And it documents a communications plan to all affected parties, including any potential preventative or corrective actions to be implemented. Essentially, the overall structure of risk assessments is to ensure that hazards are identified, including their underlying causes, that mitigations are applied, and that the residual risks remaining after those mitigations have been applied are implemented. Typically, the outcome of a risk assessment are mitigation measures, and in this case, a containment plan to manage the risk and appropriate containment as it relates to spalling. Next slide, please. This is a very technical and complex issue. It requires a significant amount of collaboration and a variety of expertise, input, and analysis. We have been having ongoing conversations with RTG and Alstom and RTM, and will continue to work collaboratively with them while holding them accountable in fully resolving the CBA spalling issue. As I said before, we will continue to engage our experts, including internally in our engineering, safety, and regulatory teams at OC Transpo, our independent safety consultant TRA, and other consultants from across the globe. Alstom has also advised that they plan to hire a CBA expert to assist with the technical reviews and analysis of the spalling issue. And in addition, Alstom has brought in additional experts from France, Germany, and the UK who are here in Ottawa now to provide expertise on the containment measures and on safety and risk management. Marco and I and Troy spent the morning with these experts, and we had some productive initial discussions on a path forward. One of the key aspects of the technical reviews is additional data and lab results that will inform not only the containment measures, but also the investigation into the root cause analysis. At this time, there are 7 CBAs undergoing lab testing. And additionally, Alstom has committed to having 42 CBAs from 5 different trains undergo a teardown, meaning they will be fully taken apart and analyzed. This analysis will help provide more data and help us better understand the spalling issue, as there's currently still some gaps. All of these technical reviews and analysis ultimately feed into the development about how to best contain and monitor this issue moving forward with Workstream 3 once it's been fully validated for efficacy. Next slide, please. As part of the ultimate containment and mitigation of the spalling issue, a condition monitoring system would provide line of sight to the condition of our fleet. A condition monitoring system essentially provides the current status and more information on the condition of the CBAs and would alert us if it reaches a point of criticality. As you may recall, the Transportation Safety Board, or the TSB, issued a rail safety advisory letter that focused on the original CBA fretting issue and following the derailments from 2021. One of the recommendations from the TSB's letter stated that the parties involved should ensure that effective onboard monitoring systems for safety critical LRV components, such as the cartridge roller bearing assemblies or CBAs, are put into place to protect the traveling public. As you saw in the pictures previously shared by Marco in the presentation, the CBAs are a very complex and technical device, and the spalling issue cannot be seen with the naked eye without tearing down the component. This is why having an effective condition monitoring system put in place may help with early detection of spalling and the progression of the issue from happening in the future. This is also why we've asked RTG to investigate the installation of a detection, measurement, and condition monitoring system in the alignment with the TSB safety advisory. Next slide, please. Finally, workstream 3 of the action plan outlines long-term work leading to safe return of full capacity of service on line 1 and the implementation of an overall long-term solution. An initial root cause analysis and investigation is currently underway for the spalling issue. The root cause analysis will be informed by both the laboratory and the testing results. Spalling is a newly documented issue, and it will now need to be assessed and reviewed further against the original CBA fretting issue to see how spalling impacts the work regarding the sustainable solution and the CBA redesign. But at this time, it's too early to tell what, if any, impact spalling will have on the overall sustainable solution. This is why a bearing condition monitoring system would be so beneficial to RTG and to Alstom, and we will be embedding this into the longer-term solution to ensure the safe and stable service on line 1. L'ordonnance de la sécurité restera en place jusqu'à la ville soit convaincue
The
que les
security directive or the safety directive will be in place up until the city will be satisfied that requirements have been satisfied. We will continue to hold RTG to account.
Open and in place until the city is satisfied that the requirements have been met, and will continue to hold our contractors accountable. That concludes the overview of the action plan, and I want to take a moment to sincerely thank all of our teams who have been working around the clock on this issue. Je vais maintenant passer la présentation à mon collègue Joël.
Now, my colleague Joël.
Thank you, Sabrina, and good afternoon to everyone. Nous savons que cela a été difficile pour nos
We know
clients.
that it's been difficult.
Jusqu'à présent, nous
Up until
constatons
now,
un fort achalandage
we
dans les
see
stations et les trains,
that there is a
mais
lot
aucune surcharge
of busyness in
ou
stations and
anxiété
train,
n'a été
and
observée.
no
Our team at the Transit Operations Control Center are monitoring the system in real time, and staff have been at key locations. In response to customer feedback, we have adjusted train operations with peak service running every 3 to 4 minutes. This approach helps keep customers moving and reduces the potential for crowding during peak periods. We have seen a positive reaction to this from our customers. I also want to take a moment to thank our customers for their patience and the safe behaviors we are seeing on line 1. Please continue to stand behind the yellow line at all times and not hold the doors, as these actions help support a safe and reliable service. Next slide. I know customers have questions about what their trips will look like. As mentioned, the number of trains available for service will fluctuate. With the current available information, this is what customers can expect in the short term. We will be operating at the current service levels. There will be an opportunity to increase overall capacity once our maintainer is able to consistently provide 20 or more trains. There are no changes to weekend operations, with line 1 operating with 10-minute frequency as planned. Our teams will continue to closely monitor service through the Transit Operations Control Center and make adjustments as needed to respond to conditions in real time. As a reminder, line 2 and line 4 are not impacted by this issue. We'll continue to keep customers informed through all of our communication channels, including alerts on octranspo.com, text messages, and social media. I'll now hand it over to Troy to wrap things up. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Joel, Sabrina, Marco, for the updates. Appreciate it. So before moving on to take some questions, just going to summarize quickly a few of the key points. You know, as we stated throughout, and we can't state it enough, we are committed to safety for our customers and our employees, and that's 100% number one where we're at. And you know, you've heard the term, we're going to say it over and over again, out of abundance of caution. That's what we're going to do. And that's what we're doing here. It's a priority for all our decisions. And our customers can be assured that the vehicles that are in service now, it is a safe service. You know, as Joel just mentioned, lines 2 and 4, they continue to operate well. They operate normally. They're not impacted by this issue. We have a clear action plan to restore regular capacity for our customers and to work through this issue with our maintainer. We have 3 work streams with clear goals as part of that action plan. And to summarize very, very briefly, you know, the first goal is safe operation of service. So that's the implementation of the 100,000 kilometer limitation on the CBAs. That gives us the confidence that the service can run safely for our customers. Our second work stream is about the containment plan and restoring capacity. Validation of the containment measures, the tools, the work processes, everything they're going to do to ensure that the fleet remains safe, as well as what Ms. Pazian talked about, a detection method. And then lastly, the final goal is that long-term solution. We know an issue is occurring. How do we resolve it in a long term so it doesn't continue to impact our fleet, our vehicles, and our customers? You know, you've heard me say it. We are ultimately accountable for the service, but we are going to hold RTG accountable for their part of that, and they need to fix this problem. As this matter continues to evolve, council, the media, and our transit customers can expect that we'll continue to provide updates as more information becomes available and as we proceed with this action plan. And before I conclude, I'd like to again thank all our customers for their patience. I know and appreciate the disruption that this is causing in everyone's lives, but we have solid plans to improve the overall service. We've made some progress, but more time is needed before we can bring capacity on line 1 back to normal levels. We'll continue to keep you informed. Again, thank you for being here today. I know that was a lot of information, a lot of technical information. We're happy to take some questions. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, I was understanding that Councillor Gower was maybe going to say a few words before we started.
No, I don't need to say any words. We can get right into it. Thanks, Kathy, and thank you, staff, for the update.
Great. Okay. So the way we're going to do questions is we're going to go to the councillors that are in the audience here right now by order of ward. So the first question, and then I'll go to the councillors online. First question, Councillor Hill. Do you have a question?
Thank you, Councillor Curry, and to the transit team for the presentation. I have a few questions, but I'll just ask one right now and I'll come back on after if I'm allowed. How is this going to impact on, say, the next quarter of train operations as we go through this first phase of the identification process, the analysis? And if we interpret that the reduction in train service to customers is affecting them, is that considered a breach of contract with RTG, and are there further legal implications to that?
Thank you for the question, Councillor, and I'm sure you can appreciate in terms of the contract and some of the legal matters, I can't get into all those details, but you know, the project agreement is a performance-based contract and that they need to meet a certain performance level. And if they are not able to meet that performance level, there's various levers within the contract, penalties, both financial as well as longer term implications as well. So our priority will be leveraging the project agreement to ensure that they're making the decisions to rectify the issue, to minimize the impacts on our customers, and ultimately all costs borne with those solutions are to be borne by RTG.
Thank you. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Curry. First of all, thank you for your quick response. Just to make it clear to the audience, this is not the TR, this is not the federal government that has imposed any of this. We made that clear, that just to reiterate that. I think that's important for people to know, that it wasn't the Transportation Safety Board that came out and said anything.
That's correct, Councillor. So the Transportation Safety Board scope is when there is a reportable incident This was not a reportable incident. We're here to talk about preventability. So there is no Transport Canada or Transportation Safety Board involvement at this time.
Okay, that was just for clarification. So anyway, I'll go to my question and we'll keep it one by one so it's fair to everybody here today. Obviously, the East End, a major component of what's going to happen in the future. We know it's minimum 30 days. We can say 21, but by the bumper to bumper, it'll be 30. When will we find out? Will it be at a transit committee meeting? If there's going to be a shift from the April 1st deadline, would it be to a next following quarter? And the reason I ask is obviously we have a massive issue on busing as well right now. And there's a direct correlation between the East End extension opening, so we actually can have some buses to fulfill those needs. And I think that's paramount to what I'm hearing is if we can't get that East End line open, this will continually deplete even further on our buses. So thank you for my question.
Councillor, another very good question. You know, too early to tell in terms of, as I mentioned, too early to tell if there will be an impact on the East Extension. You know, the teams are working hard to come to a final resolution to this in terms of, you know, at least getting our fleet count back up. And there's multiple ways we can do that. You know, with additional information, with additional validation from our maintainer, it's possible, entirely possible that we can increase that 100,000 kilometer limitation or even completely remove it, right? Specific to the spalling. The other mitigations with regards to the cartridge bearing, some that we previously talked about, they still stay in place. So there's a couple streams in which we can go about doing that with RTG. We've also asked them at the same time, we've directed them to make sure that they're replacing these cartridge bearing assemblies while we're going through that process. So but we will provide a fulsome update on stage 2 as well as this issue at the upcoming transit committee meeting. I believe it's February 12th. We'll provide that update. But the direction to Richard Holder and the rail construction team is full steam ahead. You know, this is not to delay the work that we need to have. You've heard me say it many times, and I know I've been a little bit tongue in cheek in the past about, you know, are we close? We are close. We are. This does have the potential to impact that if we don't get more vehicles. But at this point, it's not impacting the construction program. It's not impacting the East Extension. And Richard's team is full steam ahead. Let's get to substantial completion so that we can get into trial running. We need to address this issue so we have more vehicles.
Great, thank you. Councillor Brockington?
Thank you, Councillor Curry, and thank you for the technical briefing today. It's appreciated. I'm trying to wrap my head around the safety order and the replacement of the cartridge bearing assemblies. Does the replacement of the cartridge bearing assemblies mean the trains or the carriages will still be held out of service? I'm trying to differentiate what the safety order impact really means. Last week, my understanding was once the CBSAs were replaced, tested, those carriages or cars would be put back in service right away. And I just want to make sure what I heard today about a safety order is not that even if we have CSBAs on the shelf, they're all replaced within 2 weeks, tested, we know they work, that the root cause investigation could take a long time and we won't be satisfied yet for many weeks, if not months. And I don't want those carriages whose CBAs have been replaced to be not put in service yet. So can you just clarify if the CBAs are replaced, they are going to be, those train carriages will be put back into service and the root cause analysis will continue, even though that might take some time?
Oh, thank you very much for the question, Councillor, and the opportunity to provide clarification. Yes, that is correct in that no vehicle with cartridge bearing assemblies over 100,000 kilometers can be put in service. That's in accordance with our safety order. Once they replace those cartridge bearing assemblies, that vehicle can be put back in service. And that is one of the opportunities in which we can start to increase the number of vehicles that are available service. Now, with that said, you know, the vehicles that are in service are putting more kilometers and are getting up to that 100,000, but you're absolutely correct. We do not want vehicles sitting there that are available. We do want to maintain 1 or 2 spares so that we can swap things out as things can occur with any fleet of vehicles. But no, you're absolutely right. Once they replace the cartridge bearing assemblies, those vehicles can be put back in service. And as I mentioned earlier, we are working on a few things in parallel, and one of those things in parallel is the validation and verification of their processes, their containment measures, so that potentially we could alleviate that and maybe make it 150,000, 200,000, or even completely remove. So that is ultimately the best case scenario, is if we could remove that restriction as we work towards the root cause and ultimate solution.
Great, thank you. Going in still ward order online, Councillor Dudas.
Thank you very much. My understanding is Metrolinx in Toronto has purchased 61 of these trains. I know they're currently using 18 of them on line 6 Finch West, and that 43 are going to be used on the Huron-Ontario line. Are they experiencing the same problems now, or will they be following in Ottawa's footsteps? Do we have support from the province on this? And are Metrolinx employees who have faced these same problems here to offer advice?
Councillor, thank you for the question. You are correct in that Toronto has a number of the same vehicles on their fleet, but they are very, very early days. You need to also remember that our issues with the cartridge bearing assemblies and the spalling didn't come to light, didn't come to fruition in the first couple of years. It was a little ways. It was a couple of years into our service that we started to see these issues occur. It remains to be seen whether or not Toronto will experience the same problems that we're having here. But we know that, having this public forum, talking about it here openly, we know that our colleagues in Toronto and Metrolinx, they're following what's going on with the vehicles here, and they've got a keen interest as well.
Okay. Thank you. I have more questions. I'll just go back on the list.
Sure, thank you. Chair of the Transit Committee, Councillor Gower.
Thanks, Kathy. Okay, two questions. One is for passengers, customers who are using the train on the platforms, are there any additional staff, customer service assistants? What kind of support has OC Transpo put out there for customers?
Thank you for the question, Chair. As you're aware, the Transit Operations Control Center has cameras in every area of every station, and we have staff dedicated to monitoring those cameras for real-time conditions. And if we see that there's any excess crowding or any response required in the field, we dispatch field staff to those areas. To this point, the trains have been managing the crowds fairly well. We haven't seen any overloaded platforms, so we've had minimal need to respond to the stations to support customers in that way to this point.
And can you just clarify what the plan is over the next few days and weeks in terms of frequency of trains in the peak hours and in the off-peak hours, and single cars versus double cars? What do you foresee over the next few days?
Of course, things are fluid, but what we're expecting is to continue with frequency of 3 to 4 minutes during peak hours, Monday to Friday. Off-peak hours, the frequency is 6 to 7 minutes. And then the late night frequency is the normal 15 minutes Monday to Thursday, and then about every 9-10 minutes on Friday nights.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Councillor. Can you just help me understand the timelines involved with swapping out the CBAs and how long it takes for a train to get to 100,000 kilometers? Are we going to see an increasing supply of trains? Are we going to struggle to maintain the required 15 available? How long does it take a train to get to 100,000 kilometers? And how long does it take to make sure that it's got the new CBAs in it once it has?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think I got part of the answer. I look to maybe Marco, he might have a little bit more. I know that in terms of the replacement of I'll just say an axle, so each axle has, as Marco indicated, has 2 CBAs. They can do approximately 2 axles per day. We know that there's some vehicles that have, only 1 axle that requires to be replaced. Other vehicles have multiple axles that need to be replaced. Part of this ongoing work is looking at the supply chain. We know that they have a little over, I think they said this morning, 68 cartridge bearing assemblies here in Ottawa. Their supplier can manufacture so many per month, and they also have a float of supply there. So, but that is something that we need to be cautious about, something we need to carefully plan out. And that's also one of the reasons why we need to manage the mileage on these vehicles while we work through this. Just look to Marco, maybe he knows a little bit about in terms of how long it takes for us to achieve the mileage on the vehicles.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And we actually talked in the morning about an optimization algorithm in order to have a maximized availability of vehicles in service. As mentioned, it's complex in terms of, on the one hand, we absolutely know how many spare parts we do have. But as Troy mentioned, we do not only replace one axle on the train, it might be multiple ones with multiple different mileage. So already this part needs an optimization, which vehicle should be taken in order to have the fastest way to bring them back into service. On the other hand, how much mileage depends as well, which kind of vehicles do we put in place? Obviously, if we have a lower number of vehicles in service, these vehicles count faster the mileage than other ones. By purpose, we have currently more vehicles available because East Extension hasn't been opened. So by purpose, we put those vehicles as well into service to let them run, to find any kind of issues there. So we were in a comfortable situation, which we are currently not anymore. So having said this, there's not one specific number that I can give now. It is based on each and every vehicle, how much it is accumulating on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, how much we can bring in, how much will be replaced in order to have these optimum numbers. But we are working on a plan on a daily basis. What and how many vehicles do we have on the next days? How many can we assume for the next week and even the next month? It is actually changing on a daily basis as well, because we have as well corrective actions. If something happens on the train, has to be taken out. So we have to readjust whether this is an optimized vehicle to replace the CBA, or maybe it's not. And this is what we mean with being fluid currently.
Maybe, Councillor, if I could add in a little bit of additional, I know you asked the question, but how long will it take? To give a bit of context, I know that in terms of, if you recall in the previous CBA issue, they're doing inspections every 3,750 kilometers. That's approximately, if that vehicle is being used on average, that's approximately 10 to 12 days. It varies depending on how frequent that train's in service. But on average, we're seeing 10 to 12 days for it to accumulate about 3,750 kilometers when they have to do that next inspection. So, but we are using a smaller fleet of vehicles at this time. So they're going to rack up the kilometers a little more quickly. And, some vehicles have more mileage than others. So the situation really is fluid and changing. But your question is relevant because, yes, that supply chain and the ability to replace CBAs, that's a critical piece as well too. I want to focus a lot of time and effort on that 100,000 kilometer restriction that we put in place as an abundance of caution, because that I think is our best opportunity to get the fleet back up. But we will only do that if we have the utmost confidence in the processes that they will be implemented.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Okay, and Councillor Menard, and just for 1 second, if someone who's listed as iPhone could let me know who they are, that would be great. But Councillor Menard, you're next.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thanks for the presentation. So just Councillor Hill kind of touched on it, but is this considered an event of default? Are there any funds being held back in payments from RTG? And are any refunds being contemplated for residents at this time?
Councillor, I think it's too early to talk about default, and I don't want to, comment on, ongoing legal matters with RTG. but I can indicate that in accordance with the PA, that there will be financial penalties that will be levied on them for their inability to provide the service as outlined in the project agreement. They're unable to right now meet the performance specifications, so there will be penalties associated with that.
Okay, I appreciate that. And just on that, the last piece there, are any refunds being contemplated for residents? And I say this just understanding this is on an LRT briefing, not on bus service, but we're really in an emergency situation with our bus service as well, where we really need to fund if funding is needed to ensure buses are available and on time. We need to get to the bottom of that, obviously, right now too. And this, combined with the bus issue, is having a huge effect on residents. So this is why I bring up the refund piece. Have staff been contemplating that, or does that need to be an action of council?
And Councillor, our focus is making every effort on whether it be bus and rail, on improving the service and making the necessary adjustments to get back to the service levels that, and you've heard me say it time and time again, our customers deserve and expect. That is our collective focus. In terms of a rebate, that would be a discussion that would be required from council.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks, Councillor Curry. I'm assuming by you moderating it that you've rejoined the Transit Committee, so that's very good news. Just on Councillor Menard's point, just before I ask my question, I do think that RTG should be involved in some of this compensation issues. We already had a problem with the buses, and now coupled with the trains, yet another default on the trains, another problem. I do think they need to be responsible with it without it being a motion from council, but we can discuss that at a later date. One of my colleagues earlier asked about, the line 1 extension to the east and potentially creating more buses, but I was really hopeful that we would have those promised buses in. We're expected to have our e-bus fleet up to 141, I believe, by the end of March 31st. That will give us the more buses to help out if this situation persists and potentially run parallel service. Could we get an update on if we're still expecting those buses in, and how soon that they will come into service?
Councillor, I can give you some information now and then commit to, this is going to be part of our detailed update at the Transit Committee in February. The new buses, they are still arriving, and that is a key part of our improvement plan on the bus service reliability side of things. So that we continue to, the vehicles continue to arrive. As they arrive, they're meant in service. We're also focusing heavily on, getting our mechanics trained on maintaining these new buses. That's a key piece of this as well. It's one thing to have the bus, but we also need to make sure that we have the mechanics that can maintain them and keep them in service, because we've got some very, very strict protocols and safety and inspection regimes for them as well. So, but the new buses, the mechanics, those are two big pieces of our plan and our actions to improve the reliability, and they are still coming. They are still being delivered to us. I don't have the numbers, but that's something I can easily follow up with you. But we also will be providing that update at the February Transit Committee meeting.
Thanks very much. And thanks very much, Troy, to you and your team. I think it's really important that we continue with all the troubles we're experiencing on LRT and the buses to continue to have these public-facing briefings, even though I know they take time. I think that transparency is really important so that the public is aware as well. So I hope that these continue on all facets, not just the LRT issue, as we move out of these trying times. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors in the audience, second question at all?
Think again, I think the long-term solution, that's a whole other discussion, and we're just dealing with the now. So I appreciate the fact that we're dealing with the now. I still have great stress about the bus situation that ties to this, because it all correlates together. It's one system. The previous councillor had kind of a dovetail on my previous question, which was related to, we're publicly providing how many e-buses are in service. As of right now, it still says 36. I think you had mentioned we're up to 50, but I assume the dashboard's going to get updated soon to what the correct number of e-buses is. But I also have been going back and forth with yourself. I was hoping to hold it till the 12th meeting, but unfortunately this is here now, and I think it's a good opportunity. Can we get a commitment to be able to get the number of diesel fleet on that same dashboard as the electric fleet, just so we know, because it's very concerning, the numbers of buses going up and down. One catches fire one week, it's gone. Next, it's, there's an accident, that bus is gone. We're counting bus by bus now, which is concerning. And having that monthly update with the e-buses that you greatly provided to us has been very helpful to the public. But could we do the similar thing with the diesel fleet and update the e-bus numbers as well? Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor, thank you for that. I know we've got members of the team here and are listening in, so we'll make sure that that gets updated on the website. And yes, we have been working on a few additional metrics that we can start sharing more publicly, and that is on the status of the fleet. I think it's important given the challenges we're facing with the fleet availability. I think that's important for us to include additional metrics on the diesel fleet. So that's a great point, and we are working towards that.
All right. First question round, Councillor Luloff.
Thank you very much. How many of these replacement bogie systems do we currently have in stock, and how quickly can they be installed on trains?
Councillor, we know that on a daily basis, they can replace 2 axles per day. For each axle, obviously there's 2 CBAs. So I'll talk in terms of axles. They can replace 2 axles per day. That's the limit they can do. They do have a supply of cartridge bearing assemblies here on site. They have just over 60 of those, and we're working through the details with regards to their supply chain and their suppliers to solidify what we can expect long term. As I said, part of it is the replacement of the cartridge bearing assembly. Part of this as well is looking at the containment measures and their monitoring program, which would help us look at that 100,000 restriction and potentially changing that to a higher number or completely removing outright. But we need the information, the data to support our decision in that regard.
Okay, and if I'm allowed a follow-up, I suppose, are we using all of the line 2 or stage 2 vehicles now on line 1 in order to supplement this? And is there an opportunity for RTM to up the amount of staff they have working on this issue to get double trains back in action? As you can imagine, with both the City of Ottawa and the federal government forcing workers back into work, and the lack of space downtown for people to park, there's a high reliance on OC Transpo services. This is probably the worst time that we could be experiencing this. So is there any plans to ramp up that work?
Thank you for the question. As I'll start with, as my colleague Joel indicated earlier, they're watching the service very closely, and with the increased frequency, albeit with single car trains, with the increased frequency, for the most period of time, the capacity on the line is able to keep up with the demand. So I'm not saying there's not situations where some people have to wait for a second train, but we're seeing very few of those occurrences. So the capacity we're providing right now is largely meeting the demand, but I recognize as well that those trains and the stations are busy as a result of not having double car trains. There are opportunities to, I think, RTG does have additional staff here in terms of their ongoing maintenance. They're here for the Stage 2 East Extension. They've had to staff up those resources to support more vehicles in service when the East Extension comes in place. They need to be prepared for that. So they already do have additional resources here, and they're leveraging those to support the ongoing operation. And then, as Ms. Pazian mentioned a little bit this morning, they brought in they've been bringing in experts that have been meeting with us to help, get to a better state than where we are right now. But aside from that, there's not opportunities to bring other resources from other properties, Toronto or Montreal. They have the resources they have. You know, I said that's why I think we're focused on a few things. We're focused on that 100,000 kilometer limitation as well as the containment measures.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leeper.
Thanks. Just one quick comment before I ask the question, which is one of the things that I've seen on the platforms, and I think, you know, I've been out watching the trains and counting those. There is room on some of the trains that are taking a while to load. If people would move away from the doors and get towards the end of the cars, that might help speed up some of the loading and keep things moving. The question I have is about nut pinning. The nut pinning has been seen as a bit of I think, a failsafe against potential derailment due to the fretting issue. Does it serve the same function with respect to the spalling issue?
Thank you for the question. The nut pinning is a very specific measurement against losing the nut itself. It does not prevent the preload loss that we are experiencing because of the fretting. The loss of the preload means that we have more axle play, which can be detected by the pry-bar test. The current damage that we do have, which is called spalling, is in a different area of the bearing, either in the inside of the outer race of the bearing or opposite, which means it does not lead to further axial play. It is actually a radial play. So therefore, the nut pinning doesn't really help on the issue of the spalling directly. Only in the case if the spalling will lead to different failure modes that are similar to the one of the fretting, then we will have the mitigation in place from the initial CBA. That's the reason why we are currently looking for any kind of containments and mitigation measures in place to detect spalling as early as possible. And this can be various, different ways of detecting those. Again, this is what we are discussing closely with the experts, which we have discussed in the morning and continuing tomorrow morning as well.
Okay, so the same pry-bar test is not going to discover the issue. Fascinating. I think I understood that. Thank you very much.
All right, I don't see any other hands up. Anyone in the audience have a third question, or Councillor Devine first? No? All right. All right, I don't see any other further questions. I guess I'm not sure if I'm supposed to conclude this meeting, but I'll turn it back to you, Troy. A 5-minute break. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for
Thank you for joining us today for our technical briefing. Merci de vous joindre à nous pour cette briefing technique. I'll ask each agency in alphabetical order to ask their question and one follow-up. Je vais inviter chaque organisme de presse par ordre alphabétique à poser une question et un suivi. And we'll start with Arthur White-Crummy from CBC.
Hi there. Thanks so much for taking our questions and for this briefing. If I recall correctly, last week, the hope was to have 20 cars in service by, I think, Monday. As of now, there are only 18. You said that we can replace 2 axles per day, and we're starting with the trains that only have one that's deficient or over 100,000. So why is this taking so long, and why are we still stuck on 18?
You're correct in that, the expectation was that we were going to have 20 vehicles for service this week. We did have a few failures for unrelated issues. These things happen with any fleet of vehicles, whether it be buses or trains, that need to be managed. But one of the outstanding issues as well too is that they needed some of these cartridge bearing assemblies. They need to remove some of these cartridge bearing assemblies from other vehicles to initiate the root cause analysis for the tear down procedure. So we're trying to have that right balance, in that we want to get more trains available for service. Look at trains that have one cartridge bearing assembly need to be replaced, or one axle, I should say, which would be 2. But at the same time, we also need to advance what's happening, what's the root cause analysis. So there's been some back and forth and discussions on that, and trying to balance those 2 priorities, because ultimately we need to know what's going on. And we're saying we need the validation of your containment measures, that they're effective. And they needed to do some of that additional analysis work to be able to provide us with that information that we need.
It sounds like there's still a lot of work to do here. You've only inspected, I think I heard 24 bogies or 24 CBAs of the potentially hundreds that are on these trains. We must at this point have some sense of a timeline for when we can return to regular service. How long is it going to take to do all this work?
I wish I did have a timeline for you. I don't. What I can assure everyone is that we're working as best we can, as hard as we can, as fast as we can, to come to a solution in terms of, in being able to increase the number of vehicles. But ultimately, it comes down to, we need to be confident that the vehicles are safe to run in service. Alstom has gone through and they've done some acoustic monitoring on the entire fleet. They're doing a second round of that acoustic monitoring, and then that's what gives them the confidence in saying your fleet is safe to operate, because we are not observing any spalling. What we're saying is, then you need to give us that validation, give us that information, give us the information that's leading you to those conclusions, so that we can better understand. We've had 2 derailments here. We've had issues with the cartridge bearing assembly. So we are going to be very, very cautious in our approach. And that's what we're applying. At the end of the day, they may be correct in saying that, the vehicles are 100% safe for service. We believe that is an accurate statement. We just want that validation and verification. I think that's fair. We're doing, I mentioned it last week in one of the conversations we were having. This is us doing our due diligence, and I think this is what our counselors and our customers would expect us to do.
Next is Leah LaRocque at CTV.
I'm just wondering, for this issue, and as tying it to the other issue, how much of this is related to the design of the tracks? How much of it is not just a problem with the vehicles or the cartridge bearings itself? Is the track itself impacting these issues?
I'll provide a little bit of an answer, and then maybe I'll look to Marco or my other colleague Richard to maybe provide a little bit more context. But when we go through those root cause analysis, it's looking at all options. I mean, with regards to the current spalling issue right now, it could also be a containment of grease. It could be an installation issue. There can be multiple reasons. It could be a batch issue. So right now we're not unruling anything out, but ultimately, and consistent with what we've done in the previous issue, RTG, you are accountable for the performance of the service, whether it be track, trains, or other related infrastructure. You're responsible to manage that. You built it, you designed it, you maintain it. We're going to hold you accountable to that. At this point in time, it's preliminary. It's early to say, but we believe it is a vehicle issue. But ultimately, that links into the long-term solution is If it is a track issue, then they would need to deal with that. But at this point in time, we believe it is more of a train issue. But I'm jumping to conclusions at this point. We need to let that analysis and that investigation continue through. So I don't know if Richard.
Yeah, Troy, you're completely correct. We have to wait as proper technical investigation for the root cause analysis before coming into conclusions. However, there's a known science around bearing failures, and even there's a standard, the ISO 50423, which explains different mode of failures. One obviously is loading, but as well, whether it's contamination, whether it's maintenance, whether it is installation, whether it's material of batches, and other ones. And we want to make sure that we have the right conclusions, the right causes analyzed before we say, it's one or the other one. However, we have started containment measures, which has to taken even before knowing the cause. Obviously, as well with the long-term solution, we have to make sure that this is contained as well in any kind of new redesign then.
So how much does this issue support the axle redesign, and where are we on the redesign issue?
RTG and Alstom continue to advance the sustainable solution for the cartridge bearing assembly. The city has always maintained that an axle redesign needs to be part of that solution, and we are aware that they have advanced a design, and they're not at the prototype or manufacturing stage yet, but they are close to finalizing a potential design for the axle cartridge bearing assembly. Sorry, the axle. I'm mixing up my words here at this point. You got me confused a bit. My apologies. No, it's okay. So we know that they are advancing an axle redesign as part of the sustainable solution, right? But now we've got this new failure mode of the spalling, and they'll have to look at that and determine, is it related to that? Does the redesign rectify it, or is there other work that needs to be done? So this is part of the analysis that needs to happen. But they are advancing a sustainable solution, which includes an axle redesign.
Right, next is Bruce Dietzman at the Ottawa Citizen.
I'm wondering if you can just confirm for me the new CBAs that are going in. They will have the same spalling issues and restrictions as the current ones, because you said, I believe, 3,750 kilometers for 10 to 12 days. So if there's still a 100,000 kilometer restriction, it would be like 8.5 months before they're breaking down again.
Presently, there's not a redesigned cartridge bearing assembly, so they would be replacing similar cartridge bearing assemblies that would have the potential same limitations. But as I mentioned, subject to additional information that they could supply to the city that meets our needs in terms of, a proper risk assessment, proper containment, validation, verification that their containment measures are effective at detecting this, that 100,000 kilometer restriction could be removed. But, we're doing our due diligence. Out of abundance of caution, we want to see that information that gives them the confidence that the fleet is safe for operation.
Okay. And Councillor Menard brought up the idea of refunds to customers, and you said that's a council decision, but I'm wondering, as head of OC, given the bus and train issues, do you think OC is providing the kind of service that's commensurate with what customers are paying for currently?
I think I speak on behalf of everyone at the organization right now that we know that we've got challenges, and it's hard on our customers, it's hard on our staff, and we're going to work as hard as we can to improve the service, whether it be bus or rail. It's a challenge. But
is the service you're providing now what people are paying for?
We're not satisfied with the level of service we're providing. We know that. We're happy that right now that the train is meeting the capacity largely that is required. On the bus service, our cancellations are too high. We outlined at Transit Committee what our plans are to get those bus counts up. We need to onboard new buses. We need more mechanics. We've got lots of good action plans that will get us to that point, but it'll take time. But no, we're not satisfied with the level of service, and we're going to keep working until we get back to the levels that are, as I said earlier, that our customers deserve and expect.
Do they deserve a refund, I guess?
That's a conversation that needs to happen at council. I have previously indicated that refunds and those types of things will pose additional financial pressures on the city, and that needs to be considered. But I understand the perspective in terms of the impact on our customers and the level of service that we're providing. So, but I think it's an important conversation that could be had.
Thank you.
Et prochainement, Frédéric Tatin, Radio-Canada.
Frédéric Pépin from Radio-Canada. The question is inaudible for the interpreter. Thanks for the question. Yes, you're quite right in what you say. RTG and Alstom have said that the trains are safe, but the city is waiting for validation. Documents, a risk analysis, if you like. And once the containment plan has been validated, we may move forward. Another question for you, Ms. Payson, on safety. I was at the University of Ottawa before I came here to talk to students using your train on a daily basis at peak times in the morning and in the afternoon. Now, there are students, these are adults, of course, they understand the safety measures, but they asked me what they said is dangerous on the platforms. They said there's a lot of people, there's crowding, people trying to get on, get off, leave a station. You've said it's safe, but some people are saying that it's a danger, it's unsafe. What are you doing to ensure that it's safe for everyone? Thank you for your question. Joël, would you like to add? Please do. Well, we have staff from my team and from the safety team, and also from the customer service team that are there to help to ensure that people remain behind the yellow line. But we knew that during peak times, especially in some stations like the University of Ottawa station, it can feel a bit unsafe. If people feel unsafe, they should tell us. But we're keeping an eye on the cameras on a regular basis to make sure that there's enough space. Joël, would you like to add? Well, thank you. There is a person in the control center keeping an eye on the busiest stations. The University of Ottawa, for example, is a focus for us. It's probably the station where we've seen the most frequent incidents overcrowding in trains. That's where we see the most overcrowding. But in these cases, the second train has been able to pick up people who weren't able to get on the first train. We've seen very, very busy platforms. Trains are very, very crowded, but we haven't seen overcrowding, if you like, people having to line up in the stairwell, for example. If we do see that type of situation, we'll send staff in immediately to help. That's one of the reasons why we've increased the frequency of trains, because some trains and stations were very busy, and this is why we've increased the frequency of trains.
We do have time for a second round of questions, so we'll start from the beginning again. Arthur, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just want to make sense of exactly what needs to happen before we can return to regular service. Is the delay mostly just waiting until we can replace all of the CBAs to get back to that, 26 cars that we need for regular service? Or is it mainly that we're waiting for inspections and information from Alstom and from RTG that could allow us to remove the 100,000 limitation?
Yeah.
Like what is the main holdup here?
It's the two items in parallel, right? So if they want, in order to decrease the number of trains in service, two things can happen. One, they replace all the CBAs on the train replace all the CBAs that have more than 100,000 kilometers on them. That can increase the number of trains in service. But as Councillor Leeper indicated, questioning with regards to supply chain, how many can they do? That's going to be a challenge, right? In parallel, we're looking at, because Alstom and RTEG have indicated that they believe that the fleet is safe for continued operation. We've asked for that information to validate those statements and assumptions. And, we've had good working relations with them, good meetings today. They provided examples of how they've used similar type technology on other properties where they've had bearing issues, and it's been very effective for years. So that's what gives them that confidence that, that the fleet is safe for continued operation. Good, that was great to hear. I need to see the information and how it pertains to our system and our cartridge bearing assemblies. So it's great that you've done this, 3-4 other properties. You went from having bearing failures to no bearing failures, and the example they said was 3 to 4 years of no failures. Great. Okay, so that's a position of strength. But I want to see the information for us here and how it applies here. Right? So that's the two pieces to this, right? Replace the cartridge bearing assemblies that have over 100,000 kilometers, more trains available for service. But where I think the real focus is on the containment measures. Are they effective? They apply here, and then that 100,000 kilometer restriction can be reassessed, potentially changed.
And one more. I'm thinking back to the other bearing issue that we've experienced in the past. And on a certain level, it felt like we'd never gotten to the root cause. Like we learned that it was lateral forces that were causing pressures on the bearing, but we didn't know what was causing those lateral forces and whether it was the rails or the wheels. Here, I'm wondering, do we at least have that level of knowledge? Like, do we know, are we as certain what's going wrong in this situation as we were in the other situation, or are we completely in the dark as to the root cause?
We're not completely in the dark, but it's a similar situation that we know what's failing, but the question as to why it's failing is the outstanding question. It could be as simple as a batch of these cartridge bearing assemblies all came at the same time, and I'm not trying to be flippant with we could have received a bad batch. It could be containment in the grease that was used. It could be an installation issue with a limited number, because you got to keep in mind that we didn't see this issue previously. This is a new issue. And there's been a lot of work done on these cartridge bearing assemblies. So yeah, the question is, why now? What happened? So there's a few variables that need to be assessed. So we know what is failing, but the exact reason why it's failing, we don't have that information. That's part of the ongoing investigation.
Next, Leah Larocque.
Can you just walk us through, is the replacement, and just building on some of the other questions they have, is it as easy as just taking out one axle, putting it in with the other? Like, can you walk us through how this method is being done? And is it being done here in Ottawa?
Yes, the work is done here in Ottawa. Literally, yeah. You take the bogie down off the train. You can switch them out, but you can see. Looked at some of the pictures earlier. We can maybe pull one up. It's a lot of work, right? You have to lift a whole train up, put up a train on jacks, drop, a bogie that weighs thousands of pounds. Each axle is very heavy, so it's a lot of intrusive work that needs to happen. It's not. I won't say it's overly complicated, but it is manual labor and it takes time to do. And even when you just factor in, when you have a yard, 30 some odd vehicles sitting in a yard, 60 vehicles sitting in a yard, just even moving trains around within a yard takes time. So that's where, they've estimated that they could do 2 axles per day. That gives you an idea of the scope and scale and how difficult it is. But jack a train up, drop the bogie, replace the axles. It sounds really simple, but there's a lot of checks and balances that need to go in that as well too.
This is not my second question, but is that taking away then mechanics that might be working on buses that are old, or?
No, the mechanics on the trains are completely separate from the mechanics of the buses. But to your point, when the rail vehicle mechanics are working on this, they're not working on other things. Now, we're fortunate in that they've increased their staffing levels as a result of the East Extension coming on, so they have additional staff here. But there's only so many lifts in the yard. There's only so many vehicles you can work on at a time. So there are some constraints there as well too.
And I just want to ask about when we've been talking a lot about the possibility of a failure. I'm not an engineer. What does that mean? Like, are we talking this could have ultimately resulted in another derailment?
When spalling starts to occur, it's a matter of time before the bearing itself will fail. And in worst case scenario, if undetected, that can result in something catastrophic on the line in terms of, it could result in a derailment. That's worst case scenario if it's undetected. So we need to be cautious on these bearings, and that's why we're taking a very, very cautious approach, and that's why we're asking for provide us the validation, verify that your containment measures are effective for the Ottawa project, give us that confidence that you have, and that's the ongoing discussions that we're having.
Et finalement, Fred.
What do we make of this today? What's the, Arthur and I were speaking, what's the news here? I don't think there's news in this because I don't see progress on where you were Friday. So what are you telling people today at home? Are you guys seeing progress or are we not seeing progress yet? Donc en français, ça peut être la réponse aussi.
Could you
Désolé,
answer
je
in French as well? Sorry, I said it in English.
I want your answer on this either en français or en anglais or maybe both. Merci.
We are seeing progress. I know you haven't seen progress in terms of the number of vehicles available for service, but we're advancing the discussions in terms of, what's happening and what we can do to get back to normal service. So we're advancing those discussions with our maintainer. But I appreciate at this time, this is a new issue, and customers are tired of hearing of issues that are affecting, line one service or these trains. But that's our collective focus is on getting back to service as quickly as possible, but we're going to do it safely, we're going to do it reliably, and we're going to make sure it's stable. But we are making progress. The purpose of today is we want to get a little bit more into the technical information as to what's happening and explain a little bit of the difference between the former cartridge bearing assembly issue that we've talked about with this new issue with spalling. We wanted to make sure we provide that information, the opportunity to allow counselors and the media to ask questions to keep the public informed.
Okay. Merci. Thank you, everyone. This concludes our media availability.